Good evening, I'm Perry Russum. Thank you so much for streaming with us on War with Iran. We begin with a major escalation in the war with Iran, Israel attacking a natural gas field, the largest in the world and a pillar of Iran's energy supplies. Iran retaliating, unleashing a wave of attacks across the Middle East. UAE air defenses intercepting Iranian missiles and drones launched toward Dubai. Saudi Arabia also said it intercepted attempted attacks on its energy facilities, and Qatar said Iran attacked its liquefied natural gas terminal, the largest in the world. Meanwhile, the Strait of Hormuz effectively blocked, the U.S. dropped multiple 5,000-pound bunker-busting bombs along the coast. All this as oil prices surging to nearly $100 a barrel and gas prices here at home up nearly $1 from a month ago. Chief International Correspondent James Longman is in the region and leads us off.
Shockwaves and uncertainty over oil and gas prices only worsening tonight. Flames shooting into the air as Israel bombs the world's largest gas field in Iran and the backbone of the country's energy sector. Video circulating online shows the flames and smoke engulfing the refinery. Israel's move comes just hours after the US dropped multiple 5,000-pound bunker buster bombs on Iranian missile sites along the coastline in the Strait of Hormuz. The US says they targeted cruise missiles that Iran could use on oil tankers and ships passing through that critical waterway. Tonight, Iran retaliating to Israel's attack on its gas fields with a furious missile barrage across the region. This huge explosion in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, seen in video posted on social media. In the skies over Dubai tonight, air defenses knocking down incoming Iranian drones and missiles. Iran also striking the world's largest liquefied natural gas terminal in Qatar. Extensive damage reported. The Qataris condemning the attack, calling it a dangerous escalation. Iran tonight with this dire new warning, saying if you attack our oil and gas facilities, we'll do the same. Iran now urging Saudi Arabia, Qatar and the UAE to evacuate their energy facilities immediately, the lifeblood of this region and engine of the global economy. Experts say the list of Iran's targets account for more than 1.25 million barrels per day of oil and natural gas production. Tonight's attack sending global oil prices surging above $109 per barrel. Gas prices in the US spiking 94 cents since the start of the war, now averaging $3.88 a gallon. Late today, Vice President Vance called the surging gas prices a, quote, temporary blip.
We're working on a number of things. In fact, a couple of things that I think will be announced in just the next 24 to 48 hours. I don't want to get ahead of the president on that, but we recognize this is an issue.
And tonight, Iran also unleashing this cluster missile attack on Israel. Multiple explosives raining down on Tel Aviv, a couple in their 70s killed. This as the Israeli military ramps up attacks on Iranian-backed Hezbollah in Lebanon. This entire apartment building in Beirut razed to the ground. Residents given just an hour's notice to get out. Meanwhile, back in Iran, defiance on the streets of Tehran tonight. Thousands mourning the national security chief, Ali Larijani, the regime's de facto leader, assassinated in an Israeli airstrike. Tonight, Israel says they've now killed Iran's head of intelligence too.
Our thanks to James for that report. And as you saw in James' report, the constant barrage of missiles continues in the region, with cluster bombs adding to the region's defense challenges. Here's ABC's Tom Sufi Burridge with a rare look at Israel's Arrow anti-ballistic air defense system.
Iranian rockets and missiles, and Israeli air defenses lighting up the night sky over Israel. Those air defenses intercepting dozens of Iranian missiles overnight, according to Israeli officials. Part of an Iranian cluster-type missile where small bombs are released as the missiles intercepted, falling on this apartment just outside Tel Aviv.
You can see the apartment that was hit, a couple in their 70s killed here in what was a major barrage on Israel overnight.
They have their backs against the wall, and this is why they're taking this desperate tactic. They are purposely targeting civilians across the region and in Israel.
Iran's cluster-type ballistic missiles can wreak havoc over a wide area. And the daily missile attacks from Iran are testing Israel's multi-layered air defenses and its stocks of interceptor missiles.
We've been given rare access to this Israeli Air Force base to see this Arrow air defense system. It is Israel's longest range air defense system, and it fires giant interceptor missiles out of those tubes up into the stratosphere to knock out Iranian ballistic missiles in space.
We're shooting down ballistic missiles with another missile. I'll tell you how I explained it to my grandmother. I told her to throw a rock at me, and I would throw a rock back at her rock and hit it midair.
The IDF asked us not to show the face of this Israeli Air Force reservist, who says in this war he's working alongside other American air defense crews.
After 2 weeks of Iran and its proxies testing Israel's air defenses, I mean, your stocks of the interceptors have to be going down.
I think anyone on the defending side of the house will always say that they'd like to have more, but we are prepared for the long run, and we have ongoing production that continues to replenish whatever we're shooting.
These are the empty, spent interceptor canisters. You can see how vast they are. The interceptor missile is in there and fired out, and you can see they're burnt. Now, there are dozens here. We can't tell you exactly how many, but it gives you a sense of how long this war's been going on, how much Iran has been firing at Israel, and how active Israel's air defenses have been.
Today we sheltered with others in this parking lot after the sirens sounded, and the people we spoke to here support the war.
We are sure that we have to fight.
And that fight still raging across this region, the air raid sirens part of daily life.
Perry, 15 people have been killed in Israel since the war began 2.5 weeks ago. And that relatively low number is largely down to Israel's air defenses and people heeding the warning and heading to a shelter. Perry?
Tom, thank you. In recent days, President Trump has repeatedly said the U.S. has decimated Iran's armed forces.
We've wiped out their Navy, wiped out their military in every aspect. Their Air Force is now decimated. They have no Air Force, no Navy. They have no radar. Their radar is entirely gone. Their anti-aircraft machinery is gone. Everything is gone. Their leaders are gone.
The president's comments come as the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar all reported Iranian aerial attacks this week. But what is the actual capacity of the Iranian military? Our Stephanie Ramos spoke with ABC News national security and defense analyst and former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East, Mick Mulroy, for more.
So let's start with how Iran's armed forces work and what we know about the overall size of its military and its command structure.
So, Stephanie, there's basically two parallel military structures. You have the IRGC, which its primary mission is maintaining the regime, and then you have the Artesh, which is really the normal Iranian military. They, of course, have an air force and a navy as well. Both groups are heavily armed, of course. They are very large. The IRGC's not quite as large unless you include the Basij, which alone, the Basij, which is the paramilitary force, is over 1 million. The active IRGC is around 250,000. The regular Iranian military is about 800,000. So it is very large. It's obviously not completely destroyed, but the president is right. Many aspects of it have been significantly degraded, not only during this military campaign, but during the 12-day war that the U.S. and Israel participated in.
And Mick, let's talk about the drones, U.S. drones. 2 U.S. officials tell ABC News that more than a dozen unmanned U.S. drones have been lost in combat as part of the operations against Iran. What does that say about Iran's defensive capabilities?
So their air and missile defense was largely destroyed at the beginning of the 12-day war, including their air force. But there's still, of course, many other things that can shoot down drones, and they're never going to essentially just be completely out of them. They can get more. They obviously will ship them in. They can manufacture more. And we cannot, this country is 4 times the size, for example, of Iraq. It is very difficult to ever eliminate the ability for Iran to shoot at its neighbors, whether it's missiles, drones, or to shoot down our drones, as you just mentioned.
And we know one of the drones that they've been using, the Shahed drone, is very powerful, carrying ordnance and is GPS guided. And we know they've been using that in the area. Let's talk about sea mines. How powerful are these sea mines Iran is using in the Strait of Hormuz?
So they have several different types, some that are right on the surface, some that are hovering below the surface that can be triggered by sound or, basically seeing a large magnetic object like the hull of a ship. And then they have some that sit at the bottom, and then they can be triggered to basically float up and magnetically attach to the bottom of a ship. That's why they're so dangerous. They have thousands of them. Some can be easily in place by these small boats, which are not destroyed. President Trump was right. We have done a significant amount of damage to their naval force, over 60 ships and submarines sunk. But they still have a lot of these small boats, and they can sea mine the Straits of Hormuz within hours. Obviously, a huge issue for the United States to deal with, but not just us, but every commercial vessel. 20% of the oil that flows around the world flows through this strait, as well as other really critical minerals and the like. So it is a really big issue. We have decommissioned our mine-sweeping ships, so it will have to be done by these other ships called the littoral combat ships, but that is possible, but something that we obviously don't want to have to do in large scale. It is a very tedious operation that would put our ships within very close range of Iran and therefore danger.
And Mick, let's talk briefly about the cost. The U.S. is spending millions to defend against Iranian drones. Why are Iran's weapons of war so inexpensive to make comparatively?
So this is a concept that many countries are using. The Chinese call it assassin's mace, essentially coming up with a weapon system that can defeat a much more costly opposing country's weapon system. Think high-speed missiles that can take out an aircraft carrier, for example. But in this case, these Shahed drones are very cheap. They're about 25 to 30,000 a piece, and the interceptor missiles are about $1 million. So you could do the math. If you can overwhelm a system, you can not only likely get through it, but you can seriously create costs on the other side. So the United States is trying to adjust to that. There are certain interceptors that are now being sent out there that are around 10,000 a piece, especially a drone that can attack another drone. And we've duplicated the Shahed. It's called the Lucas. So we've come to understand that this is a new modern form of warfare. Not everything should be multi-millions of dollars. If you can be effective and much cheaper, that is really what helps countries deal with the maximum overmatch of the United States. But that doesn't mean the United States can't deal with it as well and start being much more cost effective when we fight these asymmetric battles.
Our thanks to Mick and Stephanie for that. Coming up, as the war with Iran rages on, our James Longman gives an in-depth look into how Iranians on the ground are getting their news outside of the state-run media. In times of war, experts say information can be weaponized. For the people of Iran, information is limited and heavily censored, leaving many dependent on government-operated news sources. Our James Longman shows us how Iranians are getting their news and how one option may be used to provide critical information.
What would it take for regime change in Iran? Airstrikes alone won't bring down the Islamic Republic.
When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations.
People power, that's what's needed. But with danger in the air from ongoing strikes and the streets controlled by regime loyalists, how and when would protests take place? What is the plan? Well, what Iranians see on television may hold the key.
You may think because of the internet blackout that Iranians are just sitting at home in the dark, unable to know what's going on around them. That is not true. There are a number of TV stations that are able to broadcast via satellite. You don't need an internet connection for that, and just about everybody has a satellite dish.
The regime does its best to jam signals, but millions of Iranians are watching what the regime considers dissident television. BBC Persian, Voice of America and Monoto are major news sources. Since its founding in 2017, Iran International TV has become arguably the insurgent voice, taking a much more active role in broadcasting the views of Iranian opposition outside the country. And Reza Pahlavi, the son of the late Shah, seems to have their full support. Pahlavi has courted Israeli backing in recent years and has a significant following among Iranian Americans. Every time he sends a public message, Iran International broadcasts it.
We know that our popular programs are watched by millions, sometimes tens of millions of people in Iran. The Iranian government is not happy with our operation.
This is Bozorgmeher Sharafeldin, the head of digital at the channel. I put it to him that his channel has enormous power to trigger demonstrations.
So they're waiting for a signal, and the signal could come via Reza Pahlavi, via Benjamin Netanyahu, via Donald Trump, most likely on Iran International.
The last round of protests that happened in January, which was the biggest protest in the history of the Islamic Republic, came from a call from Prince Reza Pahlavi. Yeah. And that brought millions of people to the streets in Tehran and millions in other cities. So, yeah, that message was broadcast from Iran International.
But when they tried, thousands died. According to a US-based human rights network, at least 6,800 people are known to have been killed in January's protests. That agency is looking into another 11,000 related deaths. There were widespread reports of mutilation, disfigurement, rape and sexual assault. Has Pahlavi's voice been compromised? Will Iranians listen to him again? Despite the obvious risk, Israel seems to be pushing for revolt. And in the last few days, the IDF has shifted from striking major military infrastructure to more local instruments of regime repression. Video circulating online shows some Basij checkpoints, the feared religious militia responsible for the January crackdown, being hit. And on Tuesday, the head of the Basij, Gholam Reza Soleimani, was killed in an Israeli strike. An Israeli security official tells us they are actively working to undermine the regime's internal stability and adds the idea is to give Iranians confidence that they can go to the streets. Has set up Farsi language accounts on social media, criticizing the regime and expressing support for the Iranian people. But the security official tells us Mossad is going further still, sending messages to Telegram and cell phones that read, "You are our eyes and ears, give us the intelligence." And they are. The official tells us Iranians have been giving Israelis specific addresses to aim their drones. When Israel believes it's created the conditions for revolt, the signal for Iranians to put their lives on the line for regime change may come. The danger: they may trigger a bloodbath. The Washington Post reports Israeli officials have privately briefed US diplomats that protesters will get slaughtered. Benny Sabti is an Iran expert at Tel Aviv University.
What does Israel want to get out of all of this? Because, we speak to people in the region and they will say, Israel doesn't want democracy in Iran. They just want chaos. Because as far as Israel is concerned, as long as it has hegemony in this region, then it's won.
It's so not true. It's so not true. And if we remember the 60s or the 70s, when Iran and Israel had a good relationship, also the Arab countries had good relationships with Iran. Even American presidents, Nixon and maybe others, called Iran the gendarme, the police of the region. When Iran is stable, this region is stable.
The relationship between Iran International TV and Israel is the subject of intense speculation.
And can I ask, is there a formal relationship between Israel and Iran International TV?
The information is very public. We are funded by private investors. One of them is from Saudi Arabia. And there are rumors that we are funded by Israel, but that's not correct yet.
But is a perceived proximity to Israel good for Pahlavi if Israel continues to destroy so much Iranian infrastructure?
I'm not sure President Trump's objectives for the war aligns with what Israelis want, because Israelis want to escalate and to remove the Islamic Republic at any cost, even if there is a civil war in Iran.
Omid Memarian is senior Iran analyst at Democracy for the Arab World, a think tank focused on U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East.
And people at this moment might feel like they have lost their agency, that they have no say in what is happening and what's going to happen next. And it's entirely the U.S. and Israel that are writing the book for them. And I think that's very frustrating for so many people.
Memarian thinks the longer this goes on, the easier it will be for the regime to paint this war as one against the Iranian state rather than the regime, and play on nationalist sentiment. And calls from Pahlavi on Iran International may lose their potency.
There was a perception in Iran that there would be a war. The war would be short, with not much destruction. 3 weeks into the war, we have not seen major cracks within the regime, they are not going to drop their guns and leave the country or basically join the next government, transitional government. They are going to fight street by street.
Memarian envisages a darker reality for Iran as this war continues.
There is a core group that supports the regime, and to being a martyr for them is a dream. It's not something that they escape from. So they fight to the last bullet. They will fight, and they see this as a matter of honor.
The US pulled out of last year's 12-day war against Israel's wishes. Some analysts think the Israeli strategy this time might be to get Iranians out onto the streets to force a longer US intervention. But with the oil crisis deepening and frustration growing in DC and around Europe, this war is widening by the day, and it's having an impact on the US economy.
So the big question is, if degrading the regime enough to allow protests to come out into the street takes time, how much time is Donald Trump prepared to give it?
James, thank you. Coming up, interest rates, increasing oil prices, and no end of the war with Iran in sight. What does that mean for your efforts to make ends meet? We'll tell you after the break. The Federal Reserve today held its first meeting on interest rates since the start of the war. Questions linger over rising oil prices and other economic ramifications from the conflict. Elizabeth Schulze has more on the Fed's decisions today. Elizabeth.
Hey, Perry, the Federal Reserve left interest rates unchanged here today. This is the second meeting in a row where they didn't make a change to those borrowing costs. A lot of uncertainty in the economy over what's happening in the Middle East. That was the message from Fed Chair Jerome Powell, really trying to say they are still understanding and looking at what the impacts from that oil price shock will be on the overall economy and on consumers. The big question is, how much does that filter into higher inflation? Does that change the Federal Reserve's paths and outlook when it comes to lowering interest rates? I did ask the Fed Chair, Perry, about how these higher prices that we're seeing at the pump, gas prices now up almost a full $1 on average since the war began. Here's what he said.
We don't know how big these effects are going to be, and I don't want to characterize them in any way. Of course, people are already seeing gas prices. Gas prices are up almost $1 a gallon. We hope that isn't for a long period of time, and of course, people will feel that.
Fed Chair Powell's term is set to end in May. He did say that he would effectively stay on as the Fed Chair until the nominee to replace him, Kevin Warsh, is confirmed. He said he has no intention of leaving the Fed board until that investigation into him, that threat of an investigation from the Justice Department, is well and truly over, he said. Perry.
Elizabeth, thank you. That is our show for this half hour. I'm Perry Russum. Stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thank you for streaming with us.